Well, hey everybody, welcome to the Morning Report. Today we're unpacking today's headlines, where we dive deep into the stories that are shaping our world. My name is Willie Lawson, and today is Monday, May 26, 2025 for archival purposes. It's just past midnight here Eastern Daylight Time, so if you're up late with me, grab a coffee and let's get into it. We got a heated story out of Seattle that's blowing up online. A Christian rally in Cal Anderson Park was violently disrupted by activists yesterday, May 25th. Seattle police arrested 23 people, and the mayor's response? Well, it's raising eyebrows. He's blaming the Christians for the chaos. This incident has sparked a firestorm of debate about free speech, religious freedom, and the role of groups like Antifa in our cities. So let's break it down. What happened, why it happened, and why it matters, and what it tells us about the state of our society. Hang on with me, we got a lot to unpack. All right, first, let's set the scene. Cal Anderson Park. So for those of you who don't know, because I didn't, it's in Seattle's Capitol Hill neighborhood. A place with a rich history of activism, especially since the 2020 protests that were part of the infamous CHAZ. You remember the CHAZ? Or the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone? That, of course, fell apart as soon as under its own weight of foolishness, right? Yesterday, a group called MayDay USA organized a praise and worship gathering in the park. According to Town Hall, about 200 Christians showed up. Families, kids, dogs, the whole smear, right? And what they were doing, they were singing Christian songs and praying. It was meant to be a peaceful event, a chance to share the love of Jesus Christ. As one attendee told Frontlines, but things took a sharp turn when about 50 Antifa activists, dressed in their signature black bloc attire, masks and everything, showed up to counter-protest. Antifa is claiming that the Christian event was a, quote, well-funded anti-trans, anti-queer rally led by far-right activists. Oh my gosh. Anyway, that's a quote from the Seattle Times, by the way. They started chanting. Things got heated. And then, bam! Violence broke out. Bottles were thrown, sticks were swung, and some reports say that Antifa activists assaulted both the attendees and the police. So, by the end of it, 23 Antifa members were arrested, and several people were injured, though thankfully no one was seriously hurt. Now here's where it gets messy, if it hasn't gotten messy already. Seattle's Mayor Bruce Harrell released a statement that's got a lot of folks talking. His office called the Christian gathering an extreme right-wing rally. So if you went to church yesterday, if you, I don't know, maybe sang a few songs, you prayed, you lifted up holy hands, did you know that you were an extreme right-wing rally? And he blamed the event, the praise and worship event, for disrupting the peace. His chief communication person, Jamie Husson, wrote the statement. Here's the kicker. It barely mentioned Antifa's role in the violence. Instead, Harrell's team later suggested that some anarchists had infiltrated the counter-protesters, almost as if to downplay Antifa's actions. This has left a lot of people on both sides furious. So what the game is always that the people who showed up were peaceful. And then this group showed up, infiltrated that group, and caused the chaos, and now everybody's getting blamed for it. No, not everybody's getting blamed for it. Members of Antifa are getting blamed for it. Those are the people who got arrested. Those are the people who attacked the police. That's a common play. It goes back to Occupy Wall Street. It's the same group of people. It's the same technique. So, but let's step back. Look at a bigger picture. Because it isn't about one chaotic afternoon in a park. To understand what happened, we need to talk about the players involved in all of this mess. First, the Christian group. Then Antifa. And then the city of Seattle itself. Let's talk about the group, MayDay USA. The group behind the rally describes itself as a faith-based organization focused on spreading the gospel. But Antifa and some local activists see them differently. So according to Capitol Hill Seattle News, there's been scrutiny over the group's permit to hold the event in Cal Anderson Park, a place with deep ties to the LGBTQ plus community. Critics argue that MayDay USA has ties to anti-trans and anti-queer movements, though the group itself says the event was purely about worship, not politics. Well, to be honest, yes, if this group, MayDay USA, is preaching the Bible, I guess they're right. I guess they do have ties to the whole anti-trans and anti-queer movement. I guess they do. What I'm praying is that they have a tie to the pro-Jesus movement. One attendee told Frontline that, and I quote, "It's time for churchgoers to share the love of Jesus Christ in the darkest places in the world," and that's what they were doing. I mean, it's great that a lot of us, me included, we went to church. We were in our place. We were safe. We were not facing opposition. I mean, the biggest opposition we had was maybe the AC, especially here in Florida, wasn't blowing cold enough. That's the biggest opposition. But this MayDay USA was in the lion's den, facing opposition. And maybe it's time for us to do more of that. But for Antifa, it's dog whistle for something more sinister. Okay, let's talk about Antifa. You've probably been following, if you've been following the news over the past decade, you've probably heard of them. Antifa is short for anti-fascist. It's a decentralized left-wing movement that's been around the U.S. since at least the 1980s. But they've gained some real prominence during the Trump eras. A Wikipedia entry on Antifa describes them as using both nonviolent and violent tactics, like doxing, like publishing people's address where they work, that kind of thing, harassing them at work, harassing them at home, physical confrontations. Of course, to fight whatever they see as fascism and racism. Now, they often use the black bloc technique, dressing in black, covering their faces to avoid surveillance and detection, and to create a sense of solidarity. Their stated goal is to protect the marginalized communities. But of course, their methods are polarizing. Some on the left see them as heroes. Others, even hardcore progressives, call their violence counterproductive. And on the right, well, many conservatives, including figures like Donald Trump and myself, have labeled Antifa as a domestic terrorist group. In yesterday's clash, Antifa clearly saw the Christian rally as a threat. It sort of brings to mind that phrase, "a hit dog a holler." Yes, a hit dog will holler. But here's the question. Did their actions protect anybody? Or did they just escalate the situation? I mean, we're talking about families and kids. We're not talking about, people, in battle, in riot gear. We're talking about, kids, moms and dads, and and dogs and children and throwing a frisbee and singing Christian songs and praying. That was the threat. Well, what Antifa has right is that, quite frankly, it's the biggest threat to what they stand for. It's the biggest threat. And when God moves, Antifa is going to know it. Now let's get to Mayor Harrell's response, because this is where things get really sticky and stupid. Harrell's statement calling the Christian event, quote, an extreme right-wing rally. Having church outside so other people can hear it is now an extreme right-wing rally. If only. This has drawn a ton of criticism. On X, users are lighting him up. One account, at SC Veteran 803, posted an image with the text, Islamophobic. A person that is not willing to put their head up behind and allow their country to be taken over. Harsh, right? But it reflects a sentiment I saw across the platform. A lot of people feel that Harrell is pandering to Seattle's progressive base instead of addressing the violence head on. Now on the flip side, and there is a flip side, some ex-users supported Antifa's actions. Now, what I'm guessing is that the people who are supporting Antifa's actions are Antifa members themselves online, trying to make it seem like the people are supporting this insanity. So at Emilia _ writes, shares a photo of a woman in a burqa on a beach, sort of implying that the Christian rally could lead to cultural shifts that Seattle doesn't want. A woman with a burqa? Christian rally? No. And at good old Blakey wrote this: the world needs public toilets more than mosques, referencing a completely different story about China cracking down on Islam. But it shows how these debates are interconnected, and it also shows how stupid people are. People are drawing parallels between different forms of ideological conflict, whether it's in Seattle or halfway around the world. So what's fascinating is, and frustrating at the same time, about Harrell's response is how it highlights the tightrope that some city leaders have chosen to walk. Seattle is a progressive stronghold, no doubt, and Harrell likely didn't want to alienate the activists who make up a big chunk of his voter base. But by framing the Christians as the bad guy, he's opened himself up to the accusation of bias. But frankly, I don't think he cares. The Capitol Hill Seattle News reported that Harrell has even asked the Parks Department to review the permitting process for the event, hinting that the city might have made a mistake by letting the rally happen in Cal Anderson Park in the first place. That's a bold move, and a pretty stupid one. All right. So what does all this mean? Let's zoom out again for a second. This clash in Cal Anderson Park isn't just about Antifa versus Christians. It's a microcosm of the broader cultural battles that we are seeing across the U.S. and even globally. Think about it. Just look at the X thread tied to this story. Some of the same users commenting on the Seattle incident were also reacting to a post about China demolishing a mosque and building a public toilet in its place. At American Hood E wrote, kind of sad when the West can learn from a totalitarian evil country like China how to deal with a different type of totalitarian evil philosophy such as Islam. It's a pretty wild statement, but it shows how these events tap into deeper fears about identity, religion, and power. Here in the U.S., we're grappling with the limits of free speech, if there should be limits at all, and the right to protest. The Christians at Cal Anderson Park had a legal permit to gather. They were exercising their First Amendment rights, but Antifa argues that their message, what they were actually talking about, even if it's veiled in prayer, was inherently harmful to marginalized groups. Antifa was saying that, praying about the love of Christ is somehow harmful to marginalized groups. This is what they're saying. So who gets to decide what's acceptable? And at what point does protest cross into violence? These are tough questions, and they need to be handled by adults. So I don't have all the answers, but I think they're worth wrestling with. I also can't help but think about the human cost here. Imagine being a parent at that rally, trying to shield your kid from flying bottles. And then it's the city itself. Seattle has a history for being a flashpoint for these kind of conflicts. From the WTO protests in 1999 to the George Floyd demonstration in 2020. As one commentator on Capitol Hill Seattle News put it, why do we always take the bait? Cal Anderson Park needs a cool down. I feel that. This city is tired, and yet the battles keep coming. All right, before we wrap up, I want to hear from you. Our listeners, our viewers. This story raises so many questions. Was Mayor Harrell right to call the Christian event an extreme right-wing rally? Was he right to call church, having Christian church, an extreme right-wing rally? Or is he dodging accountability for Antifa's actions? Should groups like Antifa have the right to disrupt events that they see as harmful, even if it turns violent? I have to wonder aloud if indeed this was an Islamic event, if the very same thing would have happened, and would Harrell's statement be the same? And how do we balance free speech with the need to protect communities from harm? So head over to our website, www.fightbackmedia.com, or hit us up on X at FightbackMedia to share your thoughts. I'll be reading through your comments for our next episode. So in the meantime, I think the incident at Cal Anderson Park is a wake-up call. It's a reminder that our cities, our communities, are more divided than ever. But division doesn't have to mean destruction. Maybe, just maybe, if we start listening to each other instead of shouting, we can find a way forward. I know it sounds idealistic, but I'm holding on to hope. That's it for today's morning report. If you enjoyed this deep dive, please subscribe. Leave us a review. Share this episode with a friend or with an enemy. We'll be back tomorrow with more stories that matter. Until then, go out there and learn something, love somebody, and for goodness sakes, y'all take care of yourself. We'll see you when we see you. Bye-bye now.